Welcome to S2N IAS Academy. I'm Shavani. I'm here today to discuss current affairs. The topic is G20. The first I'm going to discuss about background of G20. So after the collapse of Soviet Union, all we know it resulted in the Cold War. So many economies depended on the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union collapsed, so many economies which are dependent on Soviet Union also started to collapse, and they collapsed. So there was a discussion on global economic problem. Several countries thought that there should be a platform for discussing common economic problems. It was not seriously taken on that day. But in 1997, when economic crisis was happened in Asian countries, there were crippled down situation. So then they were thought of grouping G22, which 22 countries have taken part. Later, it has become G33 group, and in which 33 countries took part. But in 1999, it come to serious discussion. It has become G20 group, which is now we are calling G20 group. That is 19 countries, and one other one is EU, European Union. So when crisis was happened, European Union president was France. They were discussing that whom to contact about this thing. They had contacted G7, but G7 leaders were not influenced in work. So they discussed with the G20, in which so many powerful and influential countries were present. So they decided to go with the G20 countries. It came into the discussion from 2008 because so many financial crises was happened in the world after Great Depression. All countries seriously thought about this problem and thought about annual summit regarding economic problems of world. Since that time, India has taken attention on G20 grouping. It come into public picture now. So this is the background of G20. So now we are going to discuss what are the things which happened in the G20 summit. So we all know that after G20 summit, it resulted in the New Delhi Leaders Declaration, and it was 18th G20 summit. It was held in New Delhi. So first thing is reaching consensus declaration. So the most significant achievement of India's G20 presidency was India was able to arrive at a consensus based on full declaration due to differing opinion of Ukraine war. However, the ability of India to produce a consensus-based text shows that India's ability to shape global opinion and forge consensus. So this shows that India's middle path of diplomacy. And next thing is inclusion of African Union into the G20. So India's proposal of inclusion of African Union as a permanent member of G20. This reflects increasing importance of Africa for global economic growth and stability. And we all know that African countries are currently most affected by debt crisis, conflict, and climate change. African countries will thus have a say in shaping global policy agenda and voice their opinions also. Inclusion of African Union will strengthen India's ties with African countries. And next is voice of Global South. So India's presidency effectively engaged countries of Global South like Indonesia, that is previous presidency of G20, and Brazil, that will be next presidency of G20. Also, India invited important countries from Global South in its G20 presidency. This along with inclusion of African Union in the G20 as a member. India also championed the cause of Global South and voiced their concerns and problems and mobilized $10 trillion towards climate change for Global South. And not only that, cryptocurrency regulation and MDB reforms for global development was also made. So next we are going to discuss what are the issues covered in G20. So first thing is accelerate strong, sustainable, balanced, and inclusive growth. So this is the first issue covered in the G20. Next is the 2030 agenda for sustainable development. So we need to accelerate full and effective implementation of 2030 agenda for sustainable development. And next is the pursue. We have to next issue was pursue low GHG or low carbon emissions, climate resilient and environmentally sustainable development pathways by championing an integrated and inclusive approach. So by creating inclusive and integrated approach, we need to pursue low GHG or low carbon emissions. And next thing is, we all know that we world suffered very badly by COVID-19. So to encounter further health emergencies, we have to improve access to the medical countermeasures and facilitate more supplies and production capacities in developing countries to prepare better for future health emergencies. Next, promote resilient growth by urgently and effectively addressing debt vulnerabilities in developing countries. Scale up. So for effective implementation of SDGs, we have to scale up financial resources. And next, Paris Agreement. So accelerate efforts and enhance resources towards achieving the Paris Agreement. So for achieving the Paris Agreement, we need to work efficiently and effectively, including the goal of limiting global temperature rise 1.5 degrees Celsius. Next, pursue reforms for better, bigger, and more effective multilateral development banks. Next is promote digital services, digital public infrastructure, and leverage digital transformation opportunities. And next, promote sustainable, quality, healthy, safe, and gainful employment. And we have to work on close gender gaps and promote full, equal, effective, and meaningful participation of women in the economy as a decision makers. Example is Women Reservation Bill, which passed recently. And next is better integrate the perspectives of developing countries, including LDCs, LLDCs, SIDs into the future G20 agenda and strengthen the voice of developing countries in a global decision making. So next we are going to discuss what are the important initiatives launched in the G20. So broadly, there are two main things, main initiatives launched in the G20 are, first one is Global Fuel Alliance and other one is Indian Middle East Europe Corridor. So in Global Fuel Alliance, the leaders of Global Fuel Alliance was India, Singapore, Bangladesh, Italy, USA, Brazil, Argentina, Mauritius, and UAE. These all countries have launched Global Biofuel Alliance on the sidelines of G20 summit in New Delhi only. Next, Global Fuel Alliance is an alliance of governments, international organizations, and industry to facilitate adoption of biofuels. It brings together biggest consumers, producers of biofuels, aiming to drive biofuels development and deployment and position of biofuels as a key to energy transition and economic growth. Okay, and next is who are the G20 member countries part of GBA? G20 member countries which are part of GBA are Argentina, Brazil, Canada, India, Italy, South Africa, and USA. And G20 invite countries part of GBA are Bangladesh, Singapore, Mauritius, and UAE. Non-G20 supporting GBA are Kenya, Sri Lanka, Uganda, Finland, and other also. International organizations, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, World Economic Forum, UN Energy for All, UNIDO, Biofutures Platform, International Civil Aviation Organization, International Energy Agency, and other one also. So next one is India, Middle East, Europe Corridor. India, EU, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Germany, France, Italy, and USA have agreed to establish India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. So we can shortly call as IMEC. It is expected to stimulate economic development through enhanced connectivity and economic integration between Asia, Arabian Peninsula, and Europe. So IMEC mainly comprises of two separate corridor, which is Eastern Corridor connecting India and Arabian Gulf, and other one is Northern Corridor connecting Arabian Gulf to Europe. So it will include a railway line that will provide a reliable and cost-effective cross-border ship-to-rail transit network to supplement existing maritime and road transport routes, enabling goods and services to transit to, from, and between India, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, and Europe. Along the railway route, IMEC will enable laying of cable for electricity and digital connectivity and pipe for clean hydrogen export also. This corridor will secure regional supply chains, and other one is increase trade accessibility, improve trade facilitation, and support and increase emphasis on ESG impacts. The ultimate aim of IMEC is a transformative integration of Asian, Europe, and Middle East. So next, on basis of G20 discussion, we will discuss one main question, that is how the G20 presidency has given opportunity to India as a voice of Global South. In introduction, we have to define what is Global South means, like who are the countries part of Global South, like developing economies are part of Global South, whose voices are unheard, and India declare itself that it will discuss voices of Global South and discuss it whose voices and problems are unheard. So this will be intro, and in body we will discuss about how India emerged as a voice of Global South, like what India discussed in G7 summit, BRICS. In G7 summit, India discussed the voice of Global South and problems of that countries, and they also discussed problems of common features, common history like colonialism, etc. So in BRICS also it discussed problems of Global South. In body we can discuss how India emerged as a voice of Global South. In conclusion, we can conclude by India advocated Global South not only in G20 but also in G7, BRICS, and in pandemic also India emerged as a voice of Global South by exporting vaccines to 100 countries and medicines to 150 countries. India helping other countries and becoming voice of Global South. In this way, we conclude this answer. So this all about G20. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, everyone.